In the latest installment of Mock Draft Monday, the Denver Broncos made some very questionable choices in the 2023 NFL Draft. Why do Sayre and I agree or disagree with some of the picks? You get that and much more on today's brand new episode, Locked on Broncos.
You are Locked on Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into a brand new episode, Locked on Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much to everybody in Broncos Country for tuning in and making Locked on Broncos your first listen of the day every single day. Make sure you subscribe for free or follow on your favorite audio podcasting platforms or YouTube so you never miss out on an episode as soon as it's made available. Today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate Football GM. If you've ever dreamed about being a general manager, now you have the opportunity to try it by visiting ultimate-gm.com, or you can look it up on the app stores. Our listeners get a 100% boost when using promo code LOCKEDON in all caps in the game store. Sayre, it is Mock Draft Monday here on today's episode of the podcast. For those listening, for those watching, what we do here on Mock Draft Monday, we have a mock draft simulator, whatever it may be, Pro Football Network, Pro Football Focus, NFL Mocks, or Mock Draft Database. You run a simulation, and you see who the Broncos get based on how the board falls. We utilize Pro Football Network's Mock Draft Simulator to simulate the 2023 NFL Draft for the Broncos. And I'll tell you what, Sayre, there was maybe one pick I liked, but outside of that, I was like, what are they doing if this was actually the mock draft here? So let's go through and we can go back and forth here talking about who the mock draft simulator selected for the Denver Broncos.
Well, and I want to start off too, Cody, by saying, like, look, we may not like the real results in the NFL. I mean, how often we know every general manager after the NFL draft, what do they say? And every head coach, like, oh, it's so crazy. We got our guy, we got our guy at the spot. We managed to get, we can't believe he was there. They all say those things, but in reality, does everybody really win the NFL draft, Cody? Did everybody really get their guy? And certainly not every fan base is going to be happy about how a draft goes. But let's take a look at this. We can let everybody make their own determinations because just like ice cream, man, everybody's got a favorite flavor. So here we go. We're going to start this off with Brandon Joseph, the safety out of Notre Dame. He was pick number 67. And they went back-to-back defense. I know we did that on our last Thursday mock draft situation where we had a couple scenarios going back-to-back defense to start off the draft. So pick number 67, a safety. Pick number 68, Cody, Noah Sewell, the linebacker out of Oregon, who is also the brother of Detroit Lions right tackle Penei Sewell. And I think these back-to-back picks here in the third round, I think we got to talk about these specifically being the top two picks, being that they will have the highest expectations. If these two guys are the top picks, do you think this is the right direction for the Broncos to go here? And then obviously we'll talk about the picks that come after those top two.
Yeah, here's my stance. I like Noah Sewell, but when they ran the simulator and I got the results, I was like, this is it? This is who they picked, like back to back. And nothing against Brandon Joseph. Look, it's not that. It's just when I look at where Denver's at right now, I think you and I are both kind of in agreement. Denver needs to bolster some depth here, and going with a safety with their top pick in the 2023 NFL draft and then a linebacker, it doesn't necessarily make too much sense at that point, right? When there's offensive tackle prospects on the board, cornerback prospects, maybe even a talented skill player, running back. To me, I didn't like these two positions. Maybe if Denver went with maybe Brandon Joseph later on rather than, their top premier pick, maybe I would have been okay with it. But I also factored in, why did they do this pick? It didn't make sense. Noah Sewell, a linebacker. Obviously, you have Josie Jewell, Alex Singleton, who are manning the ship for Denver this year. Justin Sternada in his final year of his contract. Jonas Griffith, who obviously has a lot of talent, could play his way into an extension here in Denver, be part of the plan going forward alongside Alex Singleton, depending on how this year goes. I was like, why linebacker? So for me, I didn't like it. I didn't like these two picks back-to-back, but this next pick that the Broncos made at pick number 108, I liked. I'm sure you're going to like because you're an Iowa Hawkeye guy. They went with tight end Sam LaPorta. As you and I have discussed, you had him in one of your third-round Thursday mock drafts that we talked about. I think it was 2 weeks ago here on the Locked On Broncos podcast. I like that move there. And then another one at 139, they went with Jarrett Patterson, offensive center out of Notre Dame. And I mean, I could see center maybe being an option, but with Lloyd Cushenberry being projected by Sean Payton as the starter for them, he sees them as the starter. And then them bringing in Kyle Fuller, they have Luke Wattenberg on the roster. Going with a center right now at this draft doesn't make too much sense. And then to round things out, pick number 195, Jalen Green. They went with another safety out of Mississippi State. So you have 5 total draft picks, and you go with 2 safeties. To me, Sayre, I didn't like that, but I wanted to get your thoughts, obviously, on the final 3 picks for the Broncos in this Mock Draft Monday simulation.
Well, I can't help but love Sam LaPorta. I think obviously there's a lot of people who really like him out there, Cody. I've seen a number of Miami Dolphins fans hoping that he falls to their 2nd round pick. So if he falls to the Broncos' 4th round pick, you have to kind of question, like, what the heck is going on? What did this guy say? What is he putting in his coffee? What fruits is he eating with the peel on in the pre-draft interview process if he falls that far? But look, the simulator falls how it will, and Sam LaPorta, he would be a great top pick for the Denver Broncos, in my opinion. I know not everybody agrees on our takes on the tight end position and kind of where the team is at there, but he would certainly be a solid selection. And in fact, I would say he's the best pick of this mock draft. And like you mentioned, you got the center, Jarrett Patterson out of Notre Dame, and then you've got the additional safety there later in the 6th round. So this is where I land on this, Cody. I know my philosophy. It probably is funny for the people who are our everydayers here at Locked On Broncos to hear me just contradict myself all the time, talking about it's not about the positions, it's about the players, right? But in this scenario, I'm kind of like eating my own words in that, because I mean, this positional value that you're taking here with these picks, I just don't like it at all, especially given the value of the players in this draft at certain positions. You want to see the Broncos attack it in a little bit different of a way. So I would be more excited about different selections, but can't hate on these players. Obviously, these guys are going to go live out their NFL dream very soon, and we'll see kind of where the Broncos land with some of these guys. If they do end up selecting them, it'll be fascinating to see where did the simulator, how did the simulator do in terms of projecting what round they would go in and where the Broncos were comfortable taking them. But definitely, Cody, not the directions that I would have personally gone. Certainly not the directions little Bingo here would have gone with the picks. For those listening, my dog is trying to jump on my lap as we're recording. So you got to love it. You got to roll, just like the NFL draft, Cody, you got to roll with the punches and kind of just take things as it comes.
Bingo was saying Sam LaPorta, no matter what. There we go. Big advocate here on the show here. But Broncos Country, we are eager for your thoughts on this mock draft Monday simulation that we received results on. 67, Brandon Joseph, safety out of Notre Dame. Noah Sewell with 68. Sam LaPorta, tight end at 108. Jarrett Patterson, center at 139. And Jalen Green, 195, safety out of Mississippi State. We'll share how we feel a little bit more in depth, but which of these picks could potentially provide a boost to the Broncos in 2023 if selected? You'll get that on today's episode, Locked On Broncos. This episode of the show is brought to you by our friends at Ultimate Football GM. And if you've ever wanted to be an NFL general manager, you can put your skills and your thoughts and your perspective to the test with the Ultimate Football GM app. And when you play Ultimate Football GM, you get to control and manage every strategic aspect of your team as you play through seasons and lead your team to glory, trying to build a historic dynasty. With Ultimate Football GM, you're responsible for controlling the destiny of your franchise by hiring the right coaches and coordinators, managing all finances, including the negotiation of player salaries and terms of contracts, navigating your franchise through free agency, the draft, injuries, player personnel issues, and all the ups and downs that a season brings. All of this in a challenging and realistic game world. Ultimate Football GM is completely free. It's playable offline, where you can play on the go as you want and when you want to. Locked On Broncos listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo Locked On in all caps in the game store. That's Locked On in all caps. So make sure to check it out today. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up on the app stores. That's ultimate-gm.com. Ultimate Football GM. Start your dynasty today.
It is Mock Draft Monday here on the Locked On Broncos show. Cody, I'm excited for people because you know what? This is the best time of year. This is football Christmas, right? Everybody's waiting to see what are we going to open up on NFL Draft Weekend. So as we unpack this mock draft scenario here on Mock Draft Monday, we want to hear from you as well. Drop your mock drafts in the comments section. We'll take a look at them. Maybe we'll do a little third round Thursday situation with some of your scenarios that you put out there, or you can tweet us on Twitter. Send us a scenario on there that you're digging it. Trade up, trade down, get creative about it here, people. This is what this time of year is about. It's all about hypothetical. It's all about what people think could happen. And we're letting the bots do it as well. So this is a simulation. Remember, Cody and I, we did not put together this mock draft. Brandon Joseph, safety out of Notre Dame. Noah Sewell, linebacker out of Oregon. Sam LaPorta, tight end out of Iowa. Jarrett Patterson, center from Notre Dame. Jalen Green, safety from Mississippi State. Cody, we want to talk about which picks from this mock draft would boost the Denver Broncos roster. Where do you land on this? Which guys do you think could help right away?
Well, I feel like there are two guys that stand out to me immediately. I think Noah Sewell could help, right? I think I like him as a linebacker. You know me, I'm a big Oregon Duck guy, right? And this isn't me being biased. I think there's some things that he has that, you know, he can grow into a role. He's not going to be an instant starter. He may be not even be in line to start for maybe 2 to 3 years. And he could be a key special teams guy for Denver. But I also think the best value one would be Sam LaPorta, obviously the tight end position. I'll let you expound on him a little bit more as we continue on here in the show. But I look at where Denver is at right now, and I think for a guy like Noah Sewell, with some of the questions about linebacker depth after the season, with Josie being on the final year of his deal in Denver, with Justin Sternad being on the final year of his deal in Denver, you look at Jonas Griffith as well. He was an ERFA, an exclusive rights free agent that they tendered, and he's going to be back this year, but it kind of gives the team a little bit of control, maybe to bring him back next year as well. Depth is very important, and if you lose a guy, yeah, you're going to be in some trouble, right? But I also think that the NFL draft, considering where Denver's at right now, Sayre, with 5 draft picks and limited capital, limited options to choose from because you're not picking until pick number 67, I do think that Denver has to look at their options here. This would not be a beneficial draft for them because it doesn't necessarily address some of their major depth needs that they have at other positions with like cornerback or offensive tackle, wide receiver could be an option later on. I think you can make an argument, though, that Denver's pretty good at wide receiver right now with all the guys that they have. They have 10 guys on the roster as is. To me, I'm going to go with Noah Sewell and Sam LaPorta in terms of this. I do want to maybe make an honorable mention here for Jarrett Patterson. Now, if you go to NFL.com, you look at Lance Zierlein's scouting profile of him, kind of projects him to be like he could start in the right system, right? Where some of the strengths that he has involves communication with the guards, like great at communicating with double teams, but does struggle in one-on-one situations. So for me, it's like, is Sean Payton's offense, is that a good scheme for a guy like this to maybe cut his teeth in? Possibly, right? It could be a good scenario for him. Aside from that, I want to know your thoughts. Like, which players from this mock draft do you believe could help boost the Broncos' on-field production, whether it be on offense, defense, or special teams?
Well, I think Sam LaPorta, like you mentioned, he would be the guy from this class that I think would probably make the biggest immediate impact, just with the fact that, you know, last year, Greg Dulcich obviously limited to just 10 games with the hamstring injury, obviously limited throughout the offseason activities after just blowing up and stealing every headline from OTAs. It was the Greg Dulcich train that was only derailed by a hamstring injury, right? So you've got that in the back of your mind, but also the fact that you really want to pound the ball on the ground. And of course, I don't know that there's any major Power 5 program that does it as much as Iowa, unless you're a triple option team or something like that. I mean, that is the Ferentz MO, is running the football. And so if you're a tight end at Iowa, I know we talked about this with Noah Fant a few years back, where questions and concerns about his blocking. Of course, he's not Rob Gronkowski out there as a blocking tight end, but you got to block if you want to play for Brian Ferentz and Kirk Ferentz in that Iowa offense. And of course, they're not very prolific these days, but you still got to be able to do it. So LaPorta can do it. I think on the other hand, and another selection in this draft that would obviously be counted on to be an impact player, I mean, Brandon Joseph, he's your top pick in this class, right? So he did not have a great athletic testing score, obviously, at the scouting combine, ran in the 4.6s, only a 30.5-inch vertical. Easy for me to say, Cody. I doubt my vertical is anywhere over 25 inches, or who knows? I don't even know if it's that high. But I mean, in terms of where we're at coming out with basically every mock draft, including, you know, 4 or 5 guys that have a 9.0 or above on the RAS scale, relative athletic score, Brandon Joseph is below that tier. So I don't know. I think those would be the two guys that you'd really be counting on. Like you mentioned, the Broncos are good at the starting position at linebacker. Those would be the two guys I think would be the biggest boost right away for your offense and defense.
I'd be curious to know why Pro Football Network's mock draft simulator had Denver taking a safety with 67, right? Because as I look at the safety position right now, we just did a breakdown, a state of the Broncos safety position last week on the show. If you missed that, Broncos Country, if you're not an everyday listener, make sure you go back and you check that out. We encourage you to become an everyday listener of the show. Shout out to everybody that has responded in the comments saying that they listen every single day. We appreciate you so much. To me, adding a safety like Brandon Joseph doesn't make sense unless there's like a contingency, right? That maybe Caden Stearns isn't ready or won't be ready for training camp. But to my knowledge from people that I've spoken to, he's set to be fine for training camp. He's expected to be the starting guy next to Justin Simmons this upcoming season. You have PJ Locke, who's a great option for you as well in case one of those guys goes down. You have Delarian Turner-Yell, who is expected to take the next step this year. Adding a safety at 67 makes no sense to me whatsoever. And so I think there would have to be like some dire straight situation for Denver to go with a safety here at pick number 67. It was probably the most baffling thing to me. And I hope obviously next Monday when we do a mock draft Monday, my hope is that we get maybe a better draft haul than this one here. I know it sounds like we're being very critical. We like a couple of the players here. We just don't necessarily agree with maybe some of the position in which where they go when the rest of the board kind of fell the way that it did. So something to consider there if you're a listener here, Locked on Broncos. But one thing we are going to do, Broncos Country, we are going to grade this mock draft simulator, and we want you to grade it as well. So make sure you drop your grade in the YouTube comment section down below. If you're listening on your favorite audio podcasting platform, you can tweet us on Twitter at Cody Roark NFL, at Sayre Bedinger, at Locked on Broncos with your mock draft grade for this specific mock draft. But with that said, we'll get to that on today's episode, Locked on Broncos. I just wanted to say thanks for making Locked on Broncos your first listen every day. And every dayers, tomorrow on the show, one thing you can expect, we're going to continue our state of the Broncos after free agency. We're going to take a look at the wide receiver position. Is the wide receiver room better going into the season than it was last year? You'll get that on tomorrow's episode, Locked on Broncos. If you're an everyday listener, that's what you can expect tomorrow as well. As we jump into the fourth quarter action on today's episode, Locked on Broncos, we are going through and we are going to provide our grades for this mock draft that we conducted utilizing Pro Football Network's mock draft simulator. Just to recap here, pick number 67, the simulator went with Brandon Joseph, safety out of Notre Dame. At 68, they went Noah Sewell, linebacker out of Oregon. 108, they went Sam LaPorta, tight end out of Iowa. 139, Jarrett Patterson, center out of Notre Dame. And then 195, Jalen Green, safety out of Mississippi State. We're going to share our thoughts here. So, Sayre, I'm going to open things up to you, my friend. As we always do, we're going to take this to court. If you had to grade this mock draft simulation, if this was the haul that the Broncos went with in the 2023 NFL draft, you're the teacher. What grade are you handing out?
I'm gonna be harsh on this one, Cody. I really am, because I want people to know exactly where I'm at on this. I'm giving this a D grade. I think the picks that you just mentioned, I think there's one, maybe two really solid picks in there, and Sam LaPorta, and I think Jarrett Patterson is the other one that I really like. But you look up and down this draft, it's only 5 picks. You got zero, absolutely zero premium positions with any of those picks. And of course, with a limited draft class, here's what I think you need to do. Obviously, you need to go after the best players possible. So I'm not saying don't take a center. I'm not saying don't take a safety or a tight end or things like that. What I am saying is that maybe sprinkle in a cornerback, maybe sprinkle in a receiver, maybe sprinkle in a quarterback, even if you want a little crazy there. These picks are all happening pick 67 and later. Therefore, what do you want to do? You want to take the position or the player that's got the best chance of becoming an asset for you in terms of saving you some money. So take a corner, take an edge, take a receiver. Those are the premium offensive tackle. Of course, how could I forget? Those are the premium positions that you should be throwing darts at with this few selections, especially given how late they are in the draft. Again, it's about players versus positions most of the time, but I think you want to kind of target certain guys at positions. I do think there's a healthy blend, a healthy balance of both, but I think in this mock draft, you got 0 premium positions. And really, I think you need to do that. You absolutely need to. So I'm giving it a D. Thankfully, Sam LaPorta in this class, Cody, to prevent it from being almost an F.
Yeah, Sam LaPorta is the saving grace here, and I'll expound on that a little bit, how I feel. I think when we talk about the outlook of the tight end room, which Broncos Country, that is something you can expect this week here on the show as we go through the state of the tight end position. We take a look at every player there. We make the argument, did they get better? Did they get worse? What will they do there in training camp? We have all that here, Locked On Broncos. But for the guy, like, as you mentioned, like Sam LaPorta might be the only guy in this draft class that we had taken, well, not we had taken, but the similar had taken in this mock draft for Denver that does give you something. And look, he's projected to be a guy who's going to be a backup right away in the NFL, but has the potential to mold himself into a starter in 2 to 3 years. That's what the common consensus is there amongst some NFL scouts, according to Lance Zierlein, who conducted his draft profile as well at NFL.com. For me, just this didn't move the needle for Denver. And what blows my mind, as you had mentioned yourself, you have 5 picks in this year's NFL draft. You use 2 of those picks on a safety, a position you don't really need to really add to in this year's NFL draft class. More so, that's something maybe you add after the draft, right? Free agency. Maybe you bring back Kareem Jackson. Maybe you add an undrafted rookie free agent at safety who can come in and compete. But just spending 2 draft capital picks on a position you don't necessarily need, in my opinion, that is bad, bad, bad. I'm going to give this one a C-. And really, as you mentioned, the saving grace, Sam LaPorta. To take a look at another one as well, like Noah Sewell, I think can be good depth, but do you take him at 68? I don't like the position in which he went. Feel like he could be maybe available in the position at 108 where Sam LaPorta was taken. So maybe you swap those 2 guys there. I'm not confident with that haul. And then the last 2 picks don't necessarily move the needle for me personally. Looking at Jarrett Patterson, looking at Jalen Green, it just doesn't make a lick of sense to me. I'm going to give this a C-, low grade there for it. And I just had to say here, I'm hoping next week's mock draft simulator, please give us something better. Please give us something we can rave about on next Monday's Mock Draft Monday. But, aside from that, I think that this is an interesting season. As you mentioned, mock drafts are always meant to kind of be fun, right? It's not to be taken too serious, because I think if you get so fixated on a mock draft simulator, taking a certain guy at a certain thing every single time you do it, I think in the eyes of many fans, when they don't do that in real life, it creates a lot of disappointment. It creates outrage, like, oh, they should have taken this guy. He was here in the mock draft simulator in round 2. How come you didn't even take him in round 4? I think the reality in which how NFL teams view players versus how mock draft simulators do, it's widely different. The various opinions that happen there. So I do think that is important to kind of mention to fans, because we aren't done with the mock draft festivities. We've got Third Round Thursday coming up as well.
We do, Cody. We need that too. We need it after this, right? We need to just infuse a little bit of life, a little bit of hope into the those who out there who really love mock drafts, which is awesome to see, isn't it? I mean, how many responses did we get when you threw it out there on Twitter just last week about, hey, let's see your 3rd round picks, let's see your 3rd round scenario, and everybody puts on their George Payton and Sean Payton cap, and they're trading up and down and taking picks. I'm excited to see, Cody, how another simulator does, because that's one thing about these simulators and their algorithms. It's like, do they really understand? Do they really have a good feel for not just a team's needs, but like tendencies? Those are things that, like, the human element added into these mock draft machines can really help with, is that, we understand to a degree, hey, this is kind of, the trend for George Payton. Like, remember, in his first draft class, we had talked about this on this show, how we figured George Payton was going to prioritize running back based on the fact that in Minnesota with the Vikings, his first draft class on the job there, well, they took Adrian Peterson extremely high. Then later on down the line, you take Dalvin Cook to be that next featured running back in the offense. So we kind of figured that's really important to George Payton, being that was their philosophy in Minnesota. The mock draft machines don't really take those kind of things into an account, but at the same time, they could maybe put together a better draft than what the Broncos ultimately end up with. So it's just kind of funny how that kind of works from time to time, but I'm banking on some big time stuff from the machine coming up for next week's. But obviously, over the course of this coming week, we're going to continue to talk about the state of the roster, kind of where maybe we hope the Broncos do or don't draft guys in certain position groups. Obviously, you know me, Cody, I'm greedy. I love that we're talking about the offensive skill side of the ball. We're talking about, but we're also going to talk about everybody's favorite topic later in the week, the offensive line, right? And into next week, talking about those offensive linemen. So a lot of directions, even with only 5 picks, that the Broncos could go based on the state of the roster right now.
It is getting dicey here as we build up toward the NFL draft. We have it covered every single day here on your favorite audio podcasting platform or on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe or follow for free on those platforms so you never miss out on an episode as soon as it is made available. Just want to say thank you so much once again, Broncos Country. If you ever want to send in your mock drafts to myself or Sayre, you can send them to me at Cody at milehighsports.com. Sayre, what is your email that fans can maybe send their mock draft to you for if they want to?
Yeah, send it over to Sayre, Sayre, and then 111589 at gmail.com. I made my Gmail, Cody, back in the Stone Ages when Gmail was first a thing. So yeah, I wasn't forward thinking enough to take just Sayre.Bedinger at gmail.com. So we got the numbers loaded up in there. Sayre 111589 at gmail.com.
Send in your mock drafts as well, and especially if you want to send us your third round Thursdays, you can send them there as well, or you can send them to us on Twitter at Cody Roark NFL, at Sayre Bedinger, at Locked On Broncos. We appreciate you so much, Broncos Country, for making us your first listen of the day every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there as well. Tomorrow's episode of the show, what you can expect from Sayre and myself, we're going to break down the state of the Denver Broncos wide receiver position. Did they get better? Or did they get worse? We take a look at every player in that room and all the storylines that accompany it on tomorrow's episode, Locked On Broncos.